Solace and Sanctuary by Ignium 807. Chapter 2. I had no idea he was nobility. It's Eskel that says it, leaning forward into the circle of his brothers. They're gathered around a small table in the kitchens at Kaer Morhen, gossiping like a group of old fishwives. Eskel chuckles at the image. He doesn't think elderly ladies drink mead, but then again, what does he know? Yennefer is pretty old and she could drink any one of them under the table.
Neither did I,
Geralt says. Vesemir takes a long sip from his tankard and sets it down with a grimace.
You've traveled with the man for more than 2 decades, and you didn't know he's a fucking viscount.
Geralt lifts his shoulders in a heavy shrug.
Took you 14 years to figure out he's immortal, Lambert points out. Figures you would miss something else obvious.
Geralt kicks him under the table.
You didn't know either.
I'm not fucking him.
Sensing the possibility of a fight, Eskel nudges both their shoulders and tries to refocus the conversation.
So he showed up with his crown and got you out of a tough spot, eh, Lambert? Must have been an interesting show.
Coronet, Lambert corrects.
The 3 other witches turn on him with matching expressions of surprise.
Sorry, Eskel says. What?
It's a coronet, not a crown. Crowns have arches.
Vesemir shoots Geralt a long-suffering look. He drains the rest of his mead and wipes his mouth with the back of his hand.
You boys spend too much time around him. Next thing I know, you'll be telling me which fork is for salad and which is for steak. Geralt winces.
Small fork for salads. It's the one on the leftmost edge.
Fuck!
Lambert says with feeling. I could have told you that too! Cursing his way through all the major gods of the last century or so, Vesemir goes to refill his tankard. He collapses back into his chair with a sigh and takes a long drink.
Viscount of where?
Lettenhove, Lambert answers. Some small town in Carrick.
Is it nice?
Geralt asks. Eskel is taken aback. He turns on Geralt, a question in his eyes, but the white-haired witcher ignores him.
Lambert shrugs. Nice enough. Lots of colors everywhere. Everyone in impractical clothing. The whole place is very... Jaskier.
He takes a sip of his drink.
Why?
I always figured he was some farmer's son who ran off to become a bard. I knew about Oxenfurt.
Vesemir snores.
Everyone with ears around that boy knows about Oxenfurt.
But I thought he ended up in Posada because he had nowhere else to go.
His words give Eskel pause. He leans back, drinking deeply and letting his thoughts wander. Jaskier is a curious case. Witchers were raised and mutated to walk the path, but Jaskier tagged along willingly, befriending not 1 witcher but 4, and getting himself wrapped up in the mess of destiny along the way. It was a dirty, bloody life, nothing like the luxury he must have grown up in. Across the table, Geralt's thoughts seem to be traveling down a similar path. His expression is shuttered, brows drawn down in concentration. Eskel knows that look. It means Geralt is stewing on something, twisting his emotions around themselves until each one is indistinguishable from the others until their combined weight threatens to break him and he is forced to throw them off. A storm is brewing in his mind, and Eskel wonders what new understanding will be left behind when it finally breaks. Voices in the hallway pull Eskel from his musings. Ciri's bright tone rings clear through the kitchen door. That's a terrible fucking rhyme, she says. Geralt's eyebrows are raised, and he glares at Lambert.
No, Lambert says forcefully. I did not teach her that.
Ciri bursts into the kitchen, Jaskier hot on her heels. Her hair is back in a complex maze of braids that makes Eskel a little dizzy to look at. Flowers are tucked along the length of it, flowers that could not possibly have grown on their own, not in midwinter. Hill and full do not rhyme. Ciri plops herself down on the edge of the kitchen counter and fiddles with one of the knives at her belt. It sounds completely wrong. It's a new rhyme, Jaskier explains. He drops into Geralt's lap, pulls the tankard from his hand, and takes a deep drink. One of Geralt's hands moves up to steady him.
It isn't supposed to sound quite right.
It's ridiculous.
You're impossible,
Jaskier says. Worse than your father, really. He makes a face and grins wickedly over the edge of Geralt's cup. Worse than Yennefer. They bicker, and Eskel drinks. Vesemir and Lambert drink with him, though Vesemir takes pity on Geralt a few minutes into Jaskier's latest rant and slides a tankard his way to replace the one that has been lost to Jaskier's emphatic hand gestures. It's not until they all retire for the night, Ciri and Vesemir to their own rooms, Jaskier, Geralt, Lambert, and Eskel to their shared bed, that Eskel understands the storm brewing behind Geralt's eyes. He understands because the same question creeps into his mind as he drapes an arm around his friend's waist. Around the Viscount of Lettenhove's waist. If Jaskier has a true home to return to, why is he here?
Welcome to Lentenhove,
says Leo, and Eskel's world comes crashing down. Of course, the first place to show him true kindness in years is the same place that Jaskier rules over. Destiny would accept nothing less. Leo bows once more and heads out, blissfully unaware of how Eskel's head is spinning. It's late. It's late at night. The gods are throwing a shit fit outside, and his body is covered in bruises and scrapes, little aches and pains that make themselves known now that he's safe. The revelation of Jaskier's identity is the final cut that breaks it down. Eskel collapses back against the nicest bed he's slept in for years and passes out. The Witcher is nothing like Leo expected. He's polite, for one thing, says please and thank you like a young man should. And yes, perhaps the Witcher is several decades older than Leo by technicality, but his body does not show the years. The Witcher in Julian's songs has the table manners of a rabid bear and hair like the freshest snows in Skellig, Leo. This must not be the White Wolf. It matters not to him, nor the rest of the staff. This Witcher bears the wolf pendant. He is the White Wolf's brother, one of the other men who travels with Lord Pancras, one of those who freed him from that godforsaken camp, who saved his life and carried him through the months of trauma that followed. 4 Witchers against a camp of hundreds, the rumors say. 4 Witchers and the bard they killed for. Leo remembers cleaning spilled milk from young Julian's cheeks. He remembers watching the child grow into the man. He was there for every scrape, every stumble, for the earliest heartbreaks and the family shouting matches. He was there for the first time someone put a lute in Julian's hands and changed his life forever. Julian's late mother and father were not cruel, but they were not warm. It was to Leo's arms that Julian ran, to the promise of kind words and a full belly, no matter the time of day. He still does sometimes. Leo will be woken by a harsh knock at his door in the dead of night. He will throw it open to find a young man, still so young even after all these years, hair in disarray, silks askew, shaking because the weight of the world has finally become too much for him to bear. There is always a new story when Julian returns, when he has been held and fed and comforted by hands that are not rough with destiny. The stories come spilling out. Leo has never been beyond the boundary of Lettenhove, but he feels as though he has traveled the world. The furthest reaches of Temeria, the edges of Redania. He feels as though he has stood beside legends and watched the ships sail to Skellig, sunlight warm against his back. A new story, always, and always a new scar. Leo has never felt his years more than the day Julian returned with stories of soldiers on his lips and a tapestry of pain written across his body. He remembers holding Julian close, too relieved to see him on the doorstep alive, to even bother with customary greetings. Julian had never been burned before, even after all his years of walking alongside danger or chasing toward monsters with a bounce in his step and a lute in his arms. He had not felt the brunt of that danger, but miraculous escapes are just that. Miraculous, abject miracles from fickle gods. His voice showed its age that night. It cracked around his words as Julian watched him, eyes dark with wisdom beyond his years.
You have to stop,
Leo had pleaded.
Stop following him, Julian. Come home, rest. Your life is worth more than any ballad you could write.
Julian just shook his head.
I don't do it for the ballads, Leo. You know that.
He did. It may never have been said in so many words, but Julian's poems were clear enough.
You do it for the Witcher. Witches, Julian told him. But yes, I would follow them into the fires of hell if it meant they did not have to go alone. Why? They aren't your family. They aren't even human, Julian. You owe them nothing. I love them, Julian said simply. He leaned forward and clasped Leo's hands in both of his, smoothed the skin against the wrinkles of age. Hear me now, he begged. We share no blood between us, Leo, and yet I love you like a father. I am not fully human, and yet you treat me like a son. Do our choices not count for anything? May we not choose who holds our hearts?
Leo could only shake his head.
They will get you killed someday.
Julian held his hands all the tighter.
That's where you're wrong, my old friend. The world has tried its best to kill me. My witches are what stopped it from succeeding.
Stories of the fall of the Nilfgaardian camp inspire fear in most that hear them. Leo cannot imagine it has garnered the witches much kindness. But the stories are different in Lettenhove. Their whispers speak of protectors, of vengeful beings whose power is unleashed only on beasts that deserve it. The people of Lettenhove know the witches as heroes. Leo knows them as the men who saved his son. The witcher makes his way down to breakfast well past dawn. Leo watches him settle down in the dining room, his fingers brushing against the table before taking a tentative seat in one of the great oak chairs. Taking loud steps so as not to startle him, Leo emerges from the kitchen with 2 large trays in hand.
Good morning, sir.
His greeting is met with a blink and a flash of confusion that is quickly hidden behind a politely blank veneer.
Good morning.
Leo sets one of the trays before him. It is laden with the best of what cook could scrounge up from their winter stores. Salted meat and bread mostly, and plenty of it. Julian told some fairly memorable stories about his witch's appetites.
Thank you,
says the witcher. Leo offers him a smile.
Any friend of Lord Bankus is welcome here,
he says firmly.
Though from your hair I take it you are not the famed white wolf that Julian is so fond of.
To Leo's surprise, the witcher chuckles. It's a light sound for so large a man.
No, I am not, Geralt.
He hesitates a moment before extending his hand across the table.
My name is Eskel. Leopold of Bonden, at your service, sir. My wife, Amelie, is the woman you met last night.
Eskel nods and digs into his food with little preamble. Leo eats with him, content, for now, to watch and think. Soon enough the household will have need of him. There are always chores, always people to look after, and paperwork to complete. He had time to himself before the sun rose, but now he is ready for talk, for stories.
Have you travelled with Julian long?
The witcher pauses to consider him. His yellow eyes dig into Leo's with an intensity that makes his hackles rise. This man is a hero, yes, but he is also a predator. Leo steels himself and returns the gaze with as much passivity as he can manage.
Several years on and off. He's with Geralt most of the time. And you spend the winters together?
We do. Eskel finishes off his meal and focuses entirely on Leo.
Jaskier has spoken to you about it, I assume? Indeed, sir. He has spoken of Kaer Morhen at length.
Fondness turns Eskel's yellow eyes gold.
Jaskier speaks of everything at length.
And therein lies the problem. The fact that digs at Leo's mind and keeps the gossip circles running in the local tavern. Lord Pancras will talk anyone's ear off about every topic under the sun, save one.
He sings your praises,
Leo says in a hushed breath,
but never his own.
Doesn't sound like Jaskier to me.
Leo waves a hand. Oh, he speaks of his involvement in your adventures plenty, always sweeping in at the last second to hit some monster with a branch and save the day.
He leans in, tone turning serious.
But we both know there is more to the stories. I've seen his scars, Master Witcher.
Pain flashes across Eskel's face and is quickly smoothed away.
I asked about how he got them, and the answer I got spoke of you. Your heroics, your planning, your skill. Never his own, sir. Never that.
Eskel sets his hands on the table. He leans forward, his eyes severe and his tone heavy with honesty.
Jaskier is the bravest man I've ever met.
The words fill Leo's lungs. They wrap around his heart and settle next to memories gone grey with time, cementing a truth that he already knew.
He killed 2 men before he was taken, Eskel continues, insulted them as they dragged him away.
His breath comes slightly ragged, the raw emotion in it matching the way his fingers dig into the table.
Jaskier looked death in the eye and called it a cunt. Are those the stories you wish him to tell?
Aye, Leo says, swallowing around his dry throat.
Not many more, Master Witcher.
He stands on unsteady legs to collect their trays. Eskel catches his wrist before he can pull away completely.
At least let me pay you for the food.
Leo looks down at Eskel's hand. Strong and calloused, it looks well suited to the harsh life of a monster hunter. But his grip on Leo is soft. It is restrained as though he has experience containing his strength around weaker beings.
I'll not take your coin, sir. I'd be no true host if I did. But if you wish to pay me back, stay for the day. Eat your fill, sleep some more if you like, or tend to your horse. Stay the day out tonight. Tell us of Julian.
Some kind soul brought Scorpion up from the village before the manor and set him up in Jaskier's stables. Eskel spent a good portion of the day by his side, brushing the road from his coat and taking time to think. His clothes had disappeared from the fireplace, no doubt all being washed by a horrified servant, so he stands in the same simple shirt and trousers that were found for him last night. Leo's questions make little sense in the morning. The longer Eskel thinks on them, however, the clearer things become. Jaskier's exaggerations are egregious and dramatic, but rarely do they touch on things that truly matter. He does not sing of the times they fail, or of the pain of simple human mistakes. He does not glorify lives lost to senseless violence. In some twisted way, it makes sense that he would not speak of his own obstinate bravery. For all his boasting, Jaskier has never seemed to realize how impressive his brazen confidence is, how entirely overwhelming he can be to those who fear the things they should. He sleeps nearly naked in a bed with 3 witches every night of winter and doesn't bat an eyelash, quietly reveling in something that would have most men running for the hills with fear. Eskel meant his words when he said that Jaskier was the bravest man he ever met. Bravery is easy for witches and sorcerers. At least they have weapons to hide behind. Jaskier faces the stuff of nightmares on the path, with nothing but his lute and a disarming smile. Even after all these years, Eskel is still in wonder over it. It's with Jaskier's bravery in mind that he sits down with the manor's servants that night. Dinner was delicious, and there is just enough wine in Eskel's stomach to loosen his tongue. He answers every question candidly. He tells every story with enough detail to satisfy even Jaskier. At the end of a long evening, the servants tell stories of their own. Some of them knew Jaskier as a child. Others know him only as the absentee viscount who drops by a few times a year to play them new songs and eat the kitchen out of house and home. Leo's are the best, painting a picture of a young Jaskier coming into his own through rather dramatic trial and error. Not one of them smells of fear. Not one. They laugh at Leo's stories, and when Eskel sets his goblet down hard enough to shake the table, none of them flinch. He lets loose more than he intended to as the night winds on. It's easy, so blessedly easy, to drop his guard in a room full of people that treat him not as a monster or a sorcerer, but a man like any other. When the wine runs dry and even the young serving girls start to yawn, Amelie stands up to disband the party. Hands on her hips, she raises her voice with such determination that even Eskel listens up. "Time to sleep," she announces, "including you all. Don't think I won't notice if the keg's a little lower on the morrow." One of the men tips his hat at her and heads for the door. He slaps Eskel's shoulder on the way out. "You're a good lad," he says. "Keep the Lord safe for us, won't you?" Eskel can only nod. The others shuffle out with similar touches. A hand on his arm or a friendly cuff over the ear. One of the girls kisses his cheek, right over the scars. He stares after her long after the door has closed between them.
"You look like you've been hit by one of those signs of yours,"
Leo says. He's standing by the fireplace. Eskel turns to him slowly and lets his lips tug up into the smile he's been holding back all night. "This town is insane."
"Aye, though I don't know what about this party taught you that."
"Someone just hit me," Eskel says, dazed. "Over the ear, like a child." Leo shrugs.
"That's just Sasha. Did it hurt you, did she?"
Eskel meets his eyes with one brow arched. "I could snap her in half with a finger." The truth of his words hits him in the chest, and he settles back into his chair. Softly he says, "I could have killed every man in this room before any of you could reach a weapon."
"Yes."
Leo leaves his place by the fire and squats down next to Eskel's chair. He reaches out and lays one hand on his shoulder, a firm, warm weight that comes without expectation or fear.
"You could have, but you didn't." "You didn't," Leo interrupts. "And you never would. You're a good man, Eskel, no matter what the world seems to think. Julian trusts you."
He laughs a little and shakes his head.
"That counts for more around here than you'll ever understand. And even if you hadn't saved his life, you have his loyalty. Means you have ours too."
Leo stands up from the squat and makes a face.
My old bones can't keep up these days.
He jokes. Eskel doesn't answer. His face is set in a mask of concentration and something that looks a lot like pain. Leo sighs.
Get some sleep, son. We'll have your things packed for you in the morning.
He runs his hand through Eskel's hair on the way out, ruffling it the way Lambert does when he wants to rile him up. Eskel sits until the fire burns down to embers. His things are indeed packed the next morning. Amelie hands him a pack full to the brim with provisions and a pouch loaded with coin. Eskel accepts it with a heartfelt thanks. Leo sees him off at the stables.
Tell Lord Julian we say hello,
he says. I will. Eskel swings up onto Scorpion and reaches down to clasp the old man's hand. I'll keep him safe, Leo.
And yourself.
I, myself, too. Perhaps I'll see you again someday. Leo smiles at him.
Perhaps, Master Witcher. I look forward to it.
Miles and miles later, with Lettenhove stuck behind him, Eskel realizes that he hasn't contacted Jaskier. The songbird pendant burns against his chest. He raises a hand to it and clasps his palm around the little bird, holding it close. Jaskier would be overjoyed to learn of his reception at Lettenhove. Eskel is sure he'd be proud of his servants for the kindness. But something in Eskel stills his hand. Leo's words echo back to him, pleading for information about his lord's deeds. He could have asked Jaskier himself about all of it. He chose instead to ask a stranger. Eskel feels as though he has shared a sacred act with the people at Lettenhove, the exchange of secrets and stories by the light of the moon. Jaskier's people can tell him of the visit themselves if they so choose, but Eskel wants to keep this memory to himself. This moment when he was offered the chance to see his friend through different eyes. So he drops his hand from the pendant. He focuses on the road. He keeps his silence. The threads of destiny begin to weave together.